Mick Holton is from the Volunteer Firefighters Association, and he's here to help us try to answer a question, which is, are we actually ready for the summer of bushfires that are ahead? Now, the weather seems at this stage, touch wood, at this stage to be a little better than what it was last year, but bushfires will happen. But we've had reports and inquiries and announcements, and we're going to spend money on this and spend money on that. But Mick, something that has concerned me is that there are, particularly in places like the ACT and worries in Victoria as well, is that the trucks are old, the gear is old. So I'll ask you a question. Have we really changed in the past 12 months about how we are going to fight bushfires in Australia?
Well, no. I mean, not really. I think we've got a lot to learn. And but firstly, if anyone gets out in the bush, for those that do and have a bit of a walk around, if you've snuck into some of these areas you've probably been excluded from and seen the total devastation, it's just heartbreaking. We have destroyed the bush. We had loss of homes. We've killed koalas. We've done all those things, and then we quickly blame climate change, and no one really is too interested in active land management, because our association believes that it's all about preparing, and this is going to be a long-term project. So we can't do this overnight. We're certainly not ready now. We've still got lots of fuel around. In fact, there's 22 million hectares of bushfire-prone land in New South Wales, and we were only ever not even reaching 1% of treatment. And it is interesting that the public is keen on Indigenous-style land management, and that's where we've got to head if we're going to save our hides. But this season, I'm hoping that it's not as bad as they're saying, but they're certainly in a panic. You've only got to look at the fire service social media pages. And you mentioned Canberra earlier. I'm in Canberra now, and driving around, I live in the Snowy Mountains, but driving around Canberra, even just parks and gardens in Canberra. You were talking earlier about unemployment and all the rest of it, and we've got our parks and gardens in Canberra are terrible. We've got fuel everywhere. So we haven't learned, I don't think, from these big fires.
Yeah, and the media seem to make a lot, or at least tried to read a lot into part of the Royal Commission report that they liked, which was that, the hazard reduction thing is not the real issue. Of course, it's all climate change, all the rest of it here. But as a person who has fought fires for a big chunk of his life, pretty simple. If there is less to burn, then less will burn, or at least will be used as the fire to the fuel to supercharge fires. And we saw in the Gropers Crossing fire that when fires merge, and in part they merge because of the fuel that is there to merge, they become one hell of a disaster. So I just think land management is first, second and third. The equipment to be able to deal with it is a very important fourth. But the truth is we've got green tape everywhere that says you can't touch that ground, you can't touch that ground. Have we changed at all in the past 12 months on the regulation side of things?
No, well, there has been some improvements that come out of the inquiries, but it hasn't gone far enough. There's a document called the Bushfire Assessment Code. Got a copy here with some scribblings on it.
Good man.
But it's a document that needs to be reviewed. It's about 14 years old. It was supposed to be reviewed every 6 years. And when you go through this document, there's references and restrictions. And I did meet with the Commissioner, New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner recently. And although to his credit, I think he is very interested in improving hazard reduction, and he has done some good work so far, but he didn't really agree with us that this document needed review. But I'd like to push that through channels like media and say that these documents do need to be reviewed. We do need to remove red tape. A brigade in the Kurrajong area, as an example, were met with restrictions where they had been doing mosaic burns in their area for a long, long time. And in fact, their burning regime saved a large area in their patch during this last fire season. And they were prevented from doing the burn that they would like to because of that bureaucracy and a definition, defining a particular area as a particular type of vegetation, and it took a lot of action from them, and they even engaged the services of a forestry expert and some other people to come along to prove that it was safe for them to do that treatment of that area, and they eventually got their way. But this is the sort of red tape that brigades are facing. It was a much better scenario when brigades were looking after their own patch. Now, there was a time when that just happened. It seemed to work, bringing back the good old days when the local brigade would rock up and help someone manage some land, and they'd have a few quiet ales at the end of that big job that they just did, and everyone was happy. But yeah, we've got very bureaucratic.
Yeah, that's an observation from people like yourself that I've had the chance to talk to who are on the ground about, look, I understand that, there's a greater need to organise certain things and leap forward a little bit than where we were 10 years ago. But my sense is that certainly the volunteer services, highly bureaucratic, and like all bureaucracies, do not like being told what to do. And in actual fact, when you point out either a flaw in their logic or help them with something else they could do, part of the institutional arrogance that comes about with any sort of bureaucracy is, no, where there's no way we've got this wrong. And the document that you're just talking about, I just brought it up online, it is available on the Rural Fire Services website, is from February 2006. How can they argue that something that is 14 years old, that lots of other things in the RFS have been modernised over 14 years, but that code doesn't deserve to be nominated, doesn't deserve to be spruced up?
No. In fact, I think if you look at section 1.14, it says it was supposed to be renewed after 6 years. But look, the money goes, to the wrong areas. I mean, we're spending money on very large aircraft, thinking that's going to be the saviour of us all. But whilst our association, the Volunteer Firefighters Association, supports aviation as a valuable tool, we don't believe it's the panacea. We think that you need people on the ground, but you need to reduce fuel. In fact, there's a lot of other factors as well. I mean, look at the example of wind. You get a windy day. A windy day is a terrible day. You've got a bit of fuel on the ground, you've got a hot, windy day. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. We all know that. The blacksmith, provided he had enough fuel, would work the bellows to bring the heat up. Pretty simple science. It's not rocket science at all. We can't be blaming climate change. Climate change, we won't go into climate change, but to blame climate change we'll be here for hours, as much as I'd love to do that. But a few degrees in temperature is not going to make a big difference. It's the fuel, it's those bad windy days, and we get those bad days. We've had those bad days in the past. The thing that's different over recent years is the fuel. We have neglected our backyard and let the fuel build and build over decades. Now we're paying the price.
Good on you, Mick. Nice to talk to you, mate. All the best.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the show.
See you later. Pleasure. I think we'll be talking plenty of times. Mick Holton is the president of the Volunteer Firefighters Association. And in the Royal Commission into the 2009 Black Saturday bushfires, they concluded that you should be doing hazard reduction at about 5% of total land mass that is burnable each and every year. In New South Wales, they did just 1% last year.